Sweetheart, this is a corporate office, not Shark Tank. We don't negotiate with junior staff. That's what Denise from HR said to my face. Right after I handed her a 14-page document outlining every vendor I'd onboarded, every system I'd cleaned, and every flaming bag of compliance dogshit I'd hosed down while the rest of the team was too busy circling back on lunch orders. I didn't blink. I didn't scream. I didn't even flinch when she did that condescending little head tilt. You know the one, where it looks like they're trying to hear your soul crumple. I just nodded, slow and calm, like I was tucking a bullet into the chamber. But let me back up. 1 week before this little HR exorcism, I was eating lukewarm instant noodles in the break room, surrounded by the smell of burnt popcorn and betrayal, while manually reconciling a vendor import that should have been handled by automated tools 3 years ago. But our tools? Broken, outdated. Half the integrations were so mangled it looked like someone had shoved spaghetti code into a meat grinder, then let Steve from IT duct tape it together during a seizure. I stayed late every night that week, patched what I could, rerouted 3 API pathways by hand, and personally chased down a ghost billing issue that had been bleeding $22,000 a month since March. All while my manager, Brad, who once forwarded me an email he himself was CC'd on, was too busy demoing the company Slack emoji wall to the new interns. So yeah, when I walked into HR, it wasn't with ego. It was exhaustion. Proof. Results. I wasn't demanding a crown. I just wanted the damn dignity of a pay bump that matched the blood I was wringing from my keyboard. And I got sweetheart. Anyway, right about here, if you're nodding your head and thinking, yep, I've been there, then hey, would mean the world if you hit that subscribe button. I'm clawing my way to my first ever 10,000 subscribers, and every click helps me fire another metaphorical HR Denise into the sun. All right, back to the tale of corporate sabotage and righteous resurrection. So I left HR's crypt with my face straight but my knuckles white. Denise smiled the whole way through like she'd just performed some kind of mercy killing. We really do value you, she chirped. We just have to be fair to the rest of the team. Right? The team that panicked when I took 1 sick day and 3 vendor portals locked themselves out like nervous breakdowns in a trench coat. I didn't rage. I didn't even vent. I just went home, made a cup of stale peppermint tea, opened my personal laptop, and logged into LinkedIn for the first time in 6 months. I didn't even update my headline, I just scrolled through every vendor, partner, and logistics firm we'd ever so much as CC'd in a group email. My search history turned into a hit list. 2 days later, I got a message. Hey, your name came up during an internal audit. You're the one who fixed our contract portal last quarter, right? It was from a senior analyst at one of our biggest clients. A medical logistics company I'd had to babysit through 3 onboarding disasters and 2 outages caused by our lazy integration team. He wanted to meet, informally, just to pick my brain. I took PTO, smiled like it was a real vacation. Didn't even tell Brad. Why would I? Brad still thought I was a contractor. I sat in their glass-walled office sipping real coffee for the first time in a month while they asked me about their own systems, which turns out were still being trampled by my old company's lazy code base. They didn't want a consultant. They wanted a cleaner, and I was already holding the mop. When I left that day, they handed me a stack of paperwork. No pressure, they said, just think about it. Full-time offer. Better title, better money, more autonomy. And one little kicker, they wanted help prepping for their upcoming vendor audit of my company. I walked home in a fog, wind slicing through my sleeves, and I smiled. Not like someone who'd won the lottery, but like someone who just saw the floorboard creak under the guy who thinks he's safe. I didn't have to scream. I didn't have to fight. I just had to wait and sharpen the knife. The job boards became my nightlight. After that HR meeting, I stopped binge-watching true crime and started living it, scrolling through listings like they were criminal dossiers. Systems analyst, integration specialist, vendor compliance manager. Every posting got cross-referenced with our partner directory like I was running a sting op. I didn't apply wide, I applied smart, only to companies that had touched our mess. Anyone who ever got burned by one of our botched deployments, billing errors, or API meltdowns, congrats. You just made my short list. By midnight, my desktop looked like a digital war room. Chrome tabs flaring, resume versions numbered like SQL titles. Coffee ring bleeding across a printed spreadsheet of past support tickets I'd personally resolved but never got credit for. If this was war, I wasn't going to the front, I was the weapon. 2 days into this covert job hunt, I got an email that stopped me cold. Subject, Quick Sync Vendor Audit Prep. The sender was someone I'd never spoken to directly, James, a senior systems director at Gen Axis Logistics, one of our firm's largest and oldest clients. If we were the greasy mechanic shop, they were the guy still letting us inspect his brakes every quarter because switching garages was too disruptive. Apparently my name had come up. He said he'd seen it buried in an old support ticket trail where I caught a recurring credential error that had been misfiled as external fault. Their side had flagged it, logged it, then quietly moved on when we resolved it. His email said, "We figured you were the one doing all the real work. You available for a quick chat?" I stared at the screen for a long time. Not just because someone noticed me, but because someone noticed correctly. We picked a Friday. I burned one of my PTO days and told Brad I was finally going to get that dental work done. He barely looked up from his phone. Probably thought I was taking a long weekend to emotionally recover from Sweetheart Gate. I smiled. Let him. I walked into Gen Axis headquarters wearing the same blazer I wore to my last real date. They sat me down in a glass conference room with citrus water and a project whiteboard still stained with faded panic notes from their last vendor sync. James leaned in. Real professional. Polite. Didn't waste time. We don't want to throw your employer under the bus, he said, but we've been watching your name pop up every time something actually gets done. And honestly, our systems are being held together with zip ties and PDF exports. We think you can help. They didn't need another postmortem report. They needed surgery. The vendor portal had failed 3 logins in the past week, triggering internal ticket loops. Their billing files came in encrypted under a protocol we deprecated 2 years ago. They had a half-implemented single sign-on flow that still routed admin resets to a no-reply inbox. All of it traced back to us, or rather, to the parts of us not named me. I didn't sell myself hard. I didn't have to. They'd already built my resume from the breadcrumbs I left behind. I don't want to cause any conflict, I said carefully, sipping their espresso like it didn't just outclass every coffee I ever made at the office Keurig. James nodded like he respected the play. Of course, just exploring. We wrapped in under an hour. He walked me out with a handshake and the kind of quiet nod that says we'll talk again soon. I walked back to my apartment with a bag of takeout I didn't remember ordering and stared at my inbox until 1 a.m. The message came in before sunrise. Formal offer attached. No pressure. We'd love to have you in time for the Q4 audit. Your old firm's up for review. Could use a translator who knows where the bodies are buried. My mouse hovered over the download button for a long time. It wasn't just an escape hatch, it was a ladder. Of junior hell and into the one place my ex-employer would have to look me in the face and smile. I was living a double life. By day, I was the junior analyst no one CC'd unless something was already on fire. By night and weekend, I was a digital surgeon cutting tumors out of Gen Axis's backend systems with surgical precision and a side of petty vengeance. I started small. Pulled the old error logs I'd stashed in my personal drive for training purposes. Wink wink, parsed through ticket IDs I remembered handling but was never credited for. Rebuilt credential chains. Drew diagrams on sticky notes until my desk looked like a corkboard from a conspiracy docuseries. I found subroutines buried like landmines, functions left undocumented, deprecated libraries duct-taped into production because Steve once read a blog post that said backward compatibility was for cowards. It was a junkyard, and somehow was mine. I spent Saturdays reverse engineering integration points from memory. On Sundays, I turned them into slides, recommendations, risk indicators, high-priority refactors. Gen Axis ate it up like candy wrapped in compliance. Their CTO started looping me into Slack discussions. I got invited to private Zoom calls, off-record, off-hours, but with serious eyes on the other end. One by one, they started treating me like a specialist. Not junior, not temporary, not sweetheart. At the office, same old script. Brad kept sending me requests to polish up this dashboard or reformat these reports for leadership. He never asked how those dashboards even pulled data, just that the pie charts looked less threatening. HR didn't check in. Denise smiled at me once in the hallway like I was a houseplant she'd forgotten to water. Everyone assumed I was content, quiet, harmless. But my resignation letter was saved on my desktop under a folder named Housekeeping. All it needed was a date. Meanwhile, Gen Axis started opening doors. Gave me limited sandbox access. Trusted me to investigate their compliance gaps. I flagged issues, backed it up with receipts, and offered solutions wrapped in legalese and vendor-safe phrasing. They started calling me their bridge, the one person who could untangle the mess without setting off landmines. I became their living Rosetta Stone for understanding why their billing was late, their reports were off, and their portal sometimes acted like it was haunted by a drunk raccoon. The adrenaline was addictive. I'd get home from a full workday, drop my bag, and look forward to booting up a terminal window. Because over there, I was trusted, respected, paid for my mind, not punished for having one. The breaking point came during a Gen Axis leadership huddle where they quietly floated the idea of replacing our firm as vendor of record. Legal had concerns. Logistics had headaches. But then the VP of Ops looked straight at me through the Zoom cam and said, "What if she didn't just consult? What if she ran it?" Silence. "Then you mean lead the audit?" He nodded. "Not just the audit, the systems, procurement integration. Long-term compliance. She already knows more than the firm we pay 6 figures to every quarter." That night, I got an official offer. Full-time, title, lead systems auditor. Salary, nearly double what I made playing dashboard made for Brad. They wanted me on board before the next vendor audit. They needed someone who could not only expose what went wrong, but prove it, clean it, and restructure it so it never went that wrong again. I didn't accept right away. Not because I doubted it. Because revenge, like wine and subpoenas, is better aged. My resignation would come. But not yet. First, I had to make sure I walked out on the exact right Monday. The one where I'd be walking right back in with a different badge. I handed in my resignation on a Wednesday morning, sandwiched between back-to-back meetings no one invited me to speak in. The HR portal made it feel like I was unsubscribing from a very dull newsletter. Click, confirm, goodbye. Denise didn't even summon me for an exit interview. Just sent me an auto-generated email with a PDF titled Transition Guidance for Departing Junior Employees. No one noticed the irony that the PDF file itself was corrupt. I laughed, alone, then renamed it Poetry. Brad, of course, found a way to make it about him. He sauntered over to my desk with his usual blend of Axe body spray and mild condescension, leaned on the divider like we were old war buddies and said, "So you're jumping ship, huh? Let me guess, Gen Axis? They go through analysts like my ex goes through crystals." I gave him a polite smile, the kind you reserve for Uber drivers who overshare about their rash. "Good luck," he added with a chuckle. "You'll be back. Everyone comes back. Everyone. Except me." Because while he was butchering metaphors and using my mouse to scroll through a pivot table he didn't understand, I was already inside Gen Axis's systems, mapping them, triaging them, rewriting them. My pre-audit roadmap was halfway done. James had looped me into their internal security threads under the alias consultant phase 0. I was neck-deep in diagnostic reports from a decade of vendor neglect, my vendor neglect. I could name every shortcut our firm took, every cover-up, every certificate that expired without renewal, every place where we didn't encrypt because the client won't notice. They noticed, and now I was their microscope. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the perfect departing ghost. I answered emails. I handed over half-baked documentation with just enough detail to look helpful, but not enough to be usable. I attended my final team sync with my camera off and my microphone conveniently glitching. Nobody asked where I was going. They all assumed it was sideways or down. They always do. I cleaned out my desk on a Friday afternoon while everyone else was busy rage-slacking about the new cafeteria coffee policy. My cardboard box was half empty. A cracked mug, a single sticky note with a quote from Good Will Hunting, and a mechanical keyboard I bought with my own money because the office one sounded like typing on toast. Before I left, I pulled out my personal planner, paper, old school, reliable. I flipped 2 weeks forward and wrote in block letters, Audit Day, Monday. Then I underlined it twice. Walking out of that building felt like molting, like shedding a skin that had grown stale, itchy, and beneath notice. I didn't turn around because why would I? The next time I stepped through those doors, it wouldn't be through the side entrance with a chipped badge and a $5 access key. It would be through the front lobby, with a laptop full of evidence, and a contract that made them answer to me. The doors hissed open like they recognized me, and maybe they did. Same office building, same beige lobby that smelled like printer toner and ambition rot. But this time, I wasn't carrying my lunch in a canvas tote and praying someone didn't accidentally eat it again. I was in a tailored navy blazer, guest badge clipped clean to my lapel, and a laptop bag that weighed more than some of the egos upstairs. Security waved me through without a second glance. New company, new clearance, new smile. At the elevator, I caught a reflection of myself in the mirrored panel. Same eyes, same spine. But the woman looking back at me wasn't tired. She wasn't overlooked. She wasn't junior staff. She was the reckoning they didn't know they invited. The elevator dinged. The moment the doors parted, I saw it ripple, shock, recognition, confusion like someone had summoned a ghost in a pantsuit. Kyle from Data blinked so hard his glasses slipped off. 2 engineers whispered as I walked by, one of them mouthing, "Is that her?" Like I'd risen from the dead instead of their own blind spots. And then, HR, Denise. She stood outside the fishbowl conference room, holding her reusable water bottle like a crucifix. I watched her eyes scan my badge, watched her realize this wasn't a friendly catch-up visit, this was business. "Welcome back," she said like the words physically hurt. "Thanks," I replied. "I'm here for the audit." She tried to smile but came out looking like she bit down on a lemon. "You're, assisting the team from Gen Axis." I opened my laptop just enough for her to glimpse the header on the first slide. Lead Systems Auditor External Compliance Liaison. Her throat clicked when she swallowed. Inside the conference room, the VP of Ops, Greg, who once told me I had great potential once I matured professionally, stood up and knocked over his coffee. It splashed across a pile of printed spreadsheets that I personally knew were 3 versions out of date. He wiped his hand on his tie and tried to pretend this was normal. "Didn't know you'd be joining us," he said, overcompensating so hard I thought a vein might burst in his neck. I slid into the seat at the head of the table, not the side, not the corner, the head. "Joining," I said, booting up my machine. "Oh no, I'm leading this one. Full systems and compliance audit. Retroactive 12 months. Silence. The kind that settles like fog in a cemetery." Greg blinked. 12 months? "Yes," I said, scrolling. "Per clause 9.3 of your contract with Gen Axis. They have the right to audit all vendor-facing systems, integration logs, credential management history, and compliance certifications going back 1 full year. I've already reviewed your vendor onboarding flow, and I'll need access to all legacy integration tickets by EOD." Denise dropped her pen. Someone cursed under their breath, and I smiled. Not a wide grin, not theatrical. Just enough to say I warned you, but only in a language the overlooked know how to speak. Because here's the thing about ghosts, they don't knock. They walk right through the walls you swore would hold. I didn't need to raise my voice. All I needed was documentation, and I had plenty. 3 days into the audit, and the walls were already starting to creak. My findings folder had grown into a digital crime scene, mislabeled credential chains, login tokens shared across departments like office birthday cake, expired compliance certificates that hadn't been renewed since the Obama administration, and vendor accounts with full admin access, granted to former employees who hadn't worked there since before the pandemic. Gen Access had given me full access, and I didn't waste a second. Every report I compiled had timestamps, metadata, and archived Slack threads with decision-makers pretending nothing was wrong while systems bled data like open wounds. By Thursday, the room felt 10 degrees colder. The VP of Ops looked like he was chewing tinfoil every time I opened my mouth. Legal joined via Zoom. Finance stopped pretending they weren't listening from the hallway. Then came the cherry on the cake. A shared credentials spreadsheet stored in a public SharePoint folder named Vendor Access Final V4 edited real use this XLSX. Unencrypted. No access logs. Last modified by, wait for it, an intern. I clicked the file open with deliberate slowness. This one's my favorite, I said, projecting the spreadsheet onto the conference room screen like it was a kindergarten show and tell. Denise from HR squirmed. That file was never meant to be permanent. No kidding, I replied. Your compliance policy literally forbids shared login records in unsecured repositories. And yet, here we are. Modified 9 times. Opened 37 times. 3 of those from out-of-network IP addresses in New Jersey, which, by the way, does not match your internal VPN footprint. Greg cleared his throat, trying to summon the ghost of authority. Well, it's hard to know who exactly was responsible for that. Probably the junior analyst before, what was her name? I turned to face him fully. I believe it was me. The silence was biblical. Greg blinked. Denise dropped her eyes. I let it breathe for a beat, maybe 2, then I calmly slid a folder across the table. I'd be happy to submit a written statement. Would you like that notarized? The legal rep on Zoom unmuted just to cough. Loudly. By end of day. My client, formally suspended all payments to my former employer, pending a full internal review. Procurement froze. Support escalations doubled. Slack channels filled with executives panic-pinging junior devs for answers they didn't have and never cared to learn. That night, I got a text from James at Gen Access. Nice work. Keep going. Let's see what else we find. Oh, I planned to. I had barely cracked open the integrations directory. Real rot hadn't even started to stink yet. But it would. And when it did, the ones who called me invisible would be forced to read every line of every mistake they made. Signed, the junior analyst they should have negotiated with. By Friday morning, the company was hemorrhaging dignity like a gas leak in a candle shop. Greg tried to play calm during the morning check-in. Said phrases like isolated incident and corrective action plan, like rearranging the deck chairs on a flaming cruise ship. Denise? She disappeared from the audit floor completely, likely hiding in some HR backroom burning sage over her expired policies. But the panic bled through. You could feel it in the air, like static before a lightning strike. Engineers I hadn't spoken to in months were suddenly emailing clarification requests about old systems I hadn't touched since I was still considered junior. Someone tried to reassign Jira tickets in my name until they realized I wasn't in the damn building anymore. Then came the quiet knock, not literal. Email. Subject line, quick chat, from a director I hadn't heard from since they asked me to stay in my lane during a cross-team planning meeting, where I politely pointed out their entire automation roadmap relied on a deprecated data pipeline I'd flagged twice. Now they wanted a favor. Given your deep familiarity with our systems, they wrote, we'd love to explore a short-term consulting engagement to stabilize critical areas. Obviously, compensation would reflect your expertise. I read that line 3 times, laughed once. Then I replied with a smile so sharp it cut through the keyboard. My rate is 5x what you used to pay me. Weekly, upfront, non-negotiable. I hit send. They replied within the hour, we'll get back to you soon. Of course they would. That night I poured a drink, something expensive, smoky, and earned. My inbox dinged again, this time not from leadership, but from the rank and file. Quiet subject lines. Hey, quick question, looking for advice. You hiring? I opened the first. A junior dev, one of the ones who used to sit across from me and never make eye contact, was looking to jump ship. Said things felt unstable. Said leadership was panicking. That he remembered I always seemed to have a plan. I opened the second, a support specialist. Same story. Their requests for training were ignored. Their backlog had tripled. They wanted out. And just like that, I realized I wasn't just auditing anymore, I was recruiting. At Gen Access, my official title hadn't changed yet, but my role, evolving by the hour. James had introduced me to their CIO over lunch. They were talking about building an internal compliance task force, small, agile, run by people who knew how to think before things went nuclear. People like me. People I'd hire. I drafted a list of candidates that night, starting with the names trickling into my inbox. Each one had once worked beside me without noticing. I was the only one bailing water while they learned tick-tock dances on company time. Now they were asking me for life rafts, and I had a whole damn fleet. Let them flounder. Let them grovel. Let them finally understand what it means to ignore the person holding the map while the building burns down, because I wasn't Junior anymore. I was the storm. It happened on a Tuesday. No drama, no press release, just a single email, CC'd to every executive that once couldn't remember my last name. Subject: formal termination of vendor agreement noncompliance and security failures, 2 sentences. Cold, surgical. Gen Axis was cutting ties with my former employer, effective immediately. All systems access revoked. All data transfers halted. All pending invoices voided. The silence that followed was louder than any explosion. By noon, Brad posted a cryptic LinkedIn status about career pivots and new opportunities. Greg updated his bio to include the word resilience. And Denise? Well, Denise didn't post anything. Not yet, because Denise didn't know what was waiting for her in conference room 3B, same room where she'd once smirked at me. Same room where she handed me a worthless pamphlet titled Understanding Your Career Path. Only this time, I wasn't on the visitor badge. This time, I ran the meeting. Gen Axis didn't just absorb the contract, they built a new department around it. My department. Internal audit, compliance architecture, vendor transitions, all reporting to me now. James handed me a new badge and a new title that morning, Director of Systems Integrity and Oversight. My office had a door. My email signature had weight. And conference room 3B had been reserved under my name. We were conducting our first quarterly review post-transition. The new faces around the table, ones I'd personally hired, sat ready with reports, clean metrics, and a roadmap that didn't look like a crime scene. They deferred to me now, not because of fear, because they knew. They knew who'd bled to fix this. They knew who walked through fire and brought receipts. The door opened at exactly 2:00 p.m. Denise stepped in, escorted by a Gen Axis liaison. She wore her HR badge like a shield. I gestured to the seat across from me, the one I used to sit in with hands folded and hopes buried. She sat, didn't smile, didn't blink. I opened my folder, slow and deliberate. At the top of the stack was a document with 3 words in bold: termination recommendations, compliance failures. I turned it, slid it across the table. Her name was halfway down the first page, nestled between 2 others I'd personally audited into oblivion. She reached for the paper with trembling fingers. I looked her dead in the eyes. "We do negotiate now," I said, voice calm, final. Pause, but not with people like you. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the Coffee Pot strikes again.